event. I appreciate everyone for coming in. My name is Gamal Nuri, and I am with Preventative Measures. And we are delighted to have you here as we begin this session in our ongoing series on speaking about various security management, loss, and loss prevention initiatives. As you come in, please ensure that you mute your mic and you make sure that your mics will remain muted. Feel free, of course, if you want to bring your camera up. We're going to be talking about enterprise security risk this morning, but it's important to highlight again how security and risk management plays such an important role in our ongoing battles to prevent loss and to reduce loss. We see numerous incidents occurring, not just here in the Bahamas, but certainly around the world, that demand a more comprehensive and cohesive application of security and loss prevention initiatives. And so the intent, again, is to keep the professionals, me and you, to keep our swords sharp so that we can provide the best product and service to our various clients and customers. So without further ado, I'm going to begin this show. Let me just connect the various dots. I hope everyone can see my screen. If you can see the screen, can someone just give me a thumbs up or just chime in? Just want to make sure we have clarity of the screen. Everyone can see the screen? Can someone chime in for me, please? Good stuff. Thank you. All right, so what we're talking about, like I said, is enterprise security risk management, and we're going to talk about strategies. We're going to talk about the applications to this particular method or management system. All right, this is being presented by Gamal Nuri. That's me. I am the head consultant for preventative measures, and I hope that you find some benefit in this particular presentation. And certainly, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the box. Okay. So moving to the next slide. In today's rapidly evolving business landscape, organizations face a myriad of security threats. And I would venture to say that every organization is now a cyber or an internet organization. In many instances, we're conducting some type of business online. And so these threats can impact our operations, our reputation, our bottom line. And like I mentioned earlier, enterprise security risk, or ESRM, as it's called in short, is a comprehensive approach which first identifies, which is important. We want to identify, assess, and mitigate these risks. Okay, so after you identify them, we want to assess or prioritize them, see which risks have the greatest impact, then find solutions via various mitigation strategies, and ensuring that we protect the critical assets and the achievement of the business objectives. Because we don't want to go and we don't understand what the risks are to the business, and subsequently we do not put the necessary tools in place to manage the various risks. That's important. You have to understand what the business is. And so we're going to look at seven strategies. And these strategies are, and again, attempting to align with the business. They want to be holistic initially, align with the business. They want to also assess the assets, identify the various assets, also give value to those assets, because some assets are not as valuable or as important as others. And then identify the risk. Again, identification and assessing of the risk mitigation strategies, technological integration, and of course, continue improvement. This cycle, because this is an ongoing cycle, especially when you consider that risk and threats and conditions change. So this isn't a one-time initiative. This is an ongoing process that will ensure that you stay current, you stay sensitive to the various threats, risks, vulnerabilities that your organization will go through on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, especially as we look now in the Bahamas or around the world, rather, we're looking at June 1st being the beginning of the hurricane season. And so now our priorities are going to tend to sway from one particular threat and sway to these please ensure that you mute your device, keep your devices mute. So this 7-step strategy is what we're going to look at over the next few moments. So let's start off with the holistic approach. Okay. All right. So considering all aspects of the organization's operation, this is holistic. You can't just pigeonhole or get tunnel vision into one aspect. The jurisdiction is an important component when you look at the holistic approach. Like I said, the Bahamas versus the United States versus Canada versus the UK versus Israel. What are the various laws? What are the various rules, customs, practices that impact how your business operates? Certainly within that jurisdiction, we speak specifically to now location, because now location speaks to, in the Bahamas, we talk about islands, maybe in a particular state, a particular province, which may have different resource availability is one of the things we're going to look at when we look at number 5. But again, that location is going to impact also your how you're going to apply your enterprise security risk program. People, and people ranging from customers, people ranging from your staff. You have high-end customers, you have high-value customers, you have delinquent customers, you have customers that propose perhaps security risk. If you, for example, if you're looking at a hotel and you're bringing in a high-end client, they may be bringing with them other risk or other threats or threats associated specifically to them. And as such, you may have to change how your business operates because a particular individual is now coming on premises. Again, when we look at people, we're looking a lot at competencies. Does the skill set exist within your business with these particular individuals? Can you train them? Do they have that skill set? Do they have the physical and the academic aptitude to deliver the service or the product that you're attempting to do? And again, production versus service versus supply. You may be a manufacturer where you're making a particular item. You may be providing a service, perhaps and you may be, or you may be just the intermediary provider where you're supplying the entities with the various resources. So again, this is what type of business operation you have. Resource availability, another important aspect of this process of the holistic approach. What is there, what raw materials exist to ensure that you can deliver that product. Regulation and oversight. You may be in an industry like banking and finance that is regulated, or in, let's say, communications, and so that your regulator has oversight, or has heavy oversight or light oversight, that again determines how the business has to operate, as there may be particular minimum standards that your organization has to meet to ensure that it can operate and continue operating. Certainly auditing, certainly compliance, all of these entities are part of that whole regulatory and oversight process to ensure that you can meet the standard and also maintain the standard of the service or product that you're delivering. Utility reliability. This is very important as you determine what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be doing it, because you want to have the power, you want to have the water, you want to have air systems. There's multiple things that you need to have in place to ensure that your business can operate in this particular dynamic. And that also includes communication. So, like I said, when you talk about a holistic approach, this is the first step, and you want to bring all of these components together as you begin this process. So if we're talking about the holistic approach, we have a comprehensive approach, and I started to talk about this because there may be internal threats to your organization, and that may be not intentional, but certainly there may be things like competencies that do not exist. There may be external threats where, for the most part, they may be intentional, where persons attempt to commit fraud, or your business is prone to fraud, armed robbery, cyber attacks, severe weather conditions. All of these things you have to speak to, or identify and address as you begin this holistic approach. Vulnerabilities, and they may include things that, because you're now, like I mentioned earlier about the internet, this now becomes a doorway into your entity. Again, intentional or unintentional. So the security that you may have had 10 years ago has to be updated to ensure that you are able to manage cyber threats. Obviously, physical security remains a very important component, as persons in many instances lean very heavily to cyber threats and forget that they left the front door open. So you have the firewalls in place, you have the antivirus, but someone walks in and picks the server up off the desk, or takes the server out of the room. So these things are important. Operational impacts, whether it's a sick out, whether it's a strike, several these all of these things have to be considered in your enterprise security risk. And I know I have discussions with individuals, and in many instances they just see security as the guy standing up at the door, or perhaps an alarm system, or perhaps a locking mechanism. They do not appreciate the fact that security has to be comprehensive and is more than just the traditional perspective that we get sort of channeled into. When we talk about interdisciplinary perspectives, we're talking about multiple stakeholders. We're talking about your customers, you're talking about your staff, you're talking about shareholders, you're talking about the regulator. So there are multiple groups that also must be considered when developing this risk program. Subject matter experts. You should be tapping into individuals out there, a good consultant who can provide you a non-biased and objective insight and opinion as to what should be happening within the organization, or how you should develop the plan. So that's a little sales pitch for preventative measures. Find someone, a group, or an individual who has that is a subject matter expert, and can help deliver the insight without any bias and influence from other stakeholders that may exist. And certainly, if you don't want to do that, then there are numerous journals, articles, associations, and I'm speaking to industry best practices. So if you're not tapping into the subject matter expert, certainly you should be scanning the internet, searching, making contact with various organizations, and see what they're doing. Hey, how did they handle a particular situation, a particular event? How are they managing that process? So that you can take some of their things, you can copy and paste, you can amend and adjust accordingly for your unique business environment. And that's important. Your environment, your conditions are going to vary. And again, I engage clients, and they have multiple locations. They have multiple branches spread out across various, not just regionally, but in different jurisdictions. And they sometimes fall into the mindset that they can cookie cutter a particular system and methodology from one branch or one location and transfer it immediately to the other. That can work up to a point, and you have to be very careful in that type of approach, because you will find, when we go back to the previous slide, we talk about resource availability, utility reliability. You may have resource availability and utility reliability that exists in one segment or one jurisdiction, but it does not exist in another. And so you have to be very careful of the cookie cutter approach to your risk management program. So let's continue. So now, strategic alignment. This is important, and this is a tough lesson that I had to learn coming out of law enforcement and going into the private sector and delivering services to private clients. Uh, does the security strategy align with the business objective? Now, me being the old policeman that I am, we lock everything up. Everything gets locked up, and then we ask questions. That's not the best thing for the business. The business is there to do that, to do business, to make money. So your strategy and your methodology, your processes have to bear that in mind. It's about the bottom line. How does the business stay safe, stay secure, but also is able to continue business? So we look at ensure that the security measures support the business objective rather than hinder operational goals. So you have to make sure you understand, hey, what is this business all about? What are we trying to accomplish? And so at the same time, we can secure it, but we're not disruptive in the process. So it involves aligning security strategies, policies, activities with the strategic direction, values, and objectives of the business to maximize their effectiveness and value. If you don't have a voice at the board or at the executive table, you need to ensure that your upline has that voice, and you can properly articulate to your upline. If you're not that person sitting in that chair, you can properly articulate to your upline what are the processes, what are the strategies that you want to implement in the business, and the value added to the business because of their implementation. That's important. That's important. So by integrating security into the fabric of the business and aligning it with broader goals and priorities, organizations can enhance their resilience, competitiveness, and long-term success. And again, this is the sell to the executive. This is the sell to the board. We want to not just be competitive, we want to be able to sustain and remain competitive, not for today, but in the long term. That's the language, that's the priorities of any business. That, hey, we're able to compete, and our level of competitiveness does not expose us to unnecessary risks. And if it does, here are the strategies that are going to ensure that we minimize and reduce those risks. And it has to be long term. It cannot be that we just have a band-aid application and that only works for the day. This is especially important for those of you who are here, who are sitting in as security managers, as risk managers. What are we implementing into the business that makes it resilient, keeps it competitive, and for the long term? So this is just a nine listing of what we're looking at. So it should not be overly restrictive. It should understand the business objectives. It should integrate into operations as best as you can. And this goes back to understand the holistic approach and who you bring to the table, and having those discussions as to what the operation is and how can your security measures integrate into that without disrupting, hindering, costing more money. Align with overall values. Again, a client had a security officer. Security officer was on their site, and the security officer decided to arm himself because of his personal affairs with a baton. And again, the intent is good, the intention is good. However, we must appreciate that the business does not want that aggressive look within on their premises at their location. So that strategy or that tactic implemented by the officer didn't align with the overall business objectives and how the business wanted to present itself front facing. So this is just an example of to ensure that your tactics on the ground with your officers, your tactics on the ground with your various software applications is not too restrictive in the ability of the staff to deliver the service. Very important concept here, because sometimes security can be overbearing. The intention is good, however, the application does not support the swift movement of the business function or the delivery of the service. It has to enhance culture. So again, for me as an old policeman, I can say that, how do I take a law enforcement public sector culture or mindset and how does that adapt into a private sector culture, in particular with regards to delivery of protective services. So that's important. Understanding the culture. Is it a laid back culture? It is a very high professional culture? How do you align your security applications to that? All right. Supporting business growth. We talked about it earlier. So competitiveness and long-term applications. So how does that ensure? How do your strategies ensure that your security measures, or rather, how do your strategies ensure that you are able to support the growth of the business? And you as a security professional have to now become a security professional for hospitality, a security professional for finance, a security professional for perhaps a power company, a security professional perhaps for a bakery. How do your strategies, how do your applications align with that? And that's whether you are doing physical security, whether you're doing technology or cyber related security. All of these things have to come together so that you understand this is what the business is. It's not just security, but it's security in a hospitality environment. It is security in a healthcare environment, in a gaming environment. How do I now ensure that my applications mesh together with the organization? And like I said earlier, minimize disruptions. You want to have multiple firewalls or multiple access channels, but now does that become cumbersome to the business, to the customers, and also to the staff, where they find themselves having to jump numerous hurdles or go through various validation processes that take too much time and takes away from delivering the service. Risk informed decisions. So as a security person, as the protection person, you want to ensure that you understand the entire risk. You want to understand that what actions are taken to perhaps put out one fire, as we would say, does not cause a major disruption in another area because of this one attempt. And that happens, and this is why the risk informed decision is so important. Understanding what is the value, what is the priority, and how do we manage that? And we're going to talk about that a little later when we talk about risk informed, because it may mean that you accept the risk, transfer the risk. Those are the types of things that you want to understand. And like I mentioned earlier, demonstrating value. Sometimes it's very difficult to quantify these initiatives, and they should. So, and how do you demonstrate that? It's important. And this is talking about improving operational efficiency. This is talking about enhancing customer trust, mitigating potential financial losses. So all of these items help you to demonstrate value. You have to be able to articulate it, because in many instances, like I said, security is not so much tangible. It's like, well, there's nothing happening. So what is security doing? And that's the crust of it right there. Because there's nothing happening, we're hoping that that means that your security process or security systems are operating in the right vein. So as we continue, we look at asset identification. So organizations can gain a clear understanding of their asset base, assess their financial health and operational performance, and make informed decisions about resource allocation, risk management, and strategic planning. So essentially, an inventory. What are we doing? What do we have? Where is it? And how much, or what is its value to the business? So we identify the asset. The first step and valuation is to complete a comprehensive inventory, as I mentioned earlier, of owned or controlled uh, items of the organization. So in some instances, they may not be controlled, they may not be owned, but they are controlled. So this includes tangible things such like buildings, vehicles, equipment, as well as other things such, let's say, patents or trademarks, copyrights, proprietary information, licenses. All of these things are under your asset identification. You may have a license to do certain things that is going to cost you X amount a month or X amount per annum, but that is a critical component in your ability to do business or to allow for other persons to access particular platforms or particular software. So all of that is under asset identification. So the next one would be categorizing the asset. And we can put them into, let's say, I'll make it simple, about four different categories. We're talking about physical assets, which is, like I mentioned earlier, buildings. Then we have financial assets, cash, investments. We have accounts. We also have intangible things like brand reputation. Is your brand being impacted negatively or positively by the security measures that you have in place? Intellectual property, customer relationships. How is your staff relating to your customers, and how are your security measures impacting customer relations? In your effort to protect customers and your assets, you may have very overbearing security measures. So these are some of the things that you want to consider. The last asset of obviously is the human asset. And that is not just your customer base, high value customer, but also your employee. And I spoke about it earlier, employee knowledge, employee competency. What happens? What happens if you lose a particular employee who has that content, is your inside or internal content matter expert? How easily can you replace? How easily can you begin or continue operations with the absence of that individual? And the question, of course, would be, well, how does this align with enterprise security risk management? That is a component, what I just described as a component of business continuity. And we talk about loss of staff or loss of key staff. If this person is a high value employee and has specific content expertise, and he's the only one, and you didn't cross train, you don't have a policy or a policy and procedure or tabletop guide on how they function, you left yourself exposed. And that is enterprise security risk, a very sometimes overlooked aspect of it. We lose a staff, and now that particular function cannot occur, or it cannot occur at the standard that we need it to occur. So from that, we prioritize assets. And again, reality check, folks. Everybody is not word the same. It's a reality check, and you have to accept it for what it is. Some assets are not as important as the other, and that covers that entire category that we just talked about. So whether it's a physical asset, whether it's a financial asset, an intangible asset, or a human asset, some assets are just going to be more than others. And you have to appreciate that, not just from what the cost is, but also what is the functionality of that asset. What does that asset do? Because the asset may be it may be, for example, and I'm trying to keep it, it may be a power cord, which is maybe $50, but that is the power cord to a critical piece of infrastructure. All right. So the value may be low, but the functionality is high. So this is what you need to assess. This is what you need to understand to ensure that, hey, we put the right mitigation factors, which we're going to get to shortly, in place to manage that particular asset. And last but not least, ongoing monitoring and reviewing. Folks, the world is fluid. It is what they say, continuous improvement. You cannot operate the same how you operated last week, last year. Things change, conditions change, circumstances change. You want to continue to operate. I have one of my recommendations when I do HR vetting is ongoing assessment of your staff. You brought in this person 5 years ago and they had a clean criminal record, but conditions, circumstances may change that we want you to continue to review and assess what is the criminal exposure to that your staff may be against. And this is especially, may not be in every industry, but certainly industries that are high cash transactions or high cash exposure to staff. We want to ensure that we keep everybody honest as best as we can. And the only way to do that is to always review, always monitor. So It also would be a consideration for continuous improvement is that if you onboard a new product or a new service, that's going to cause policies and procedures to change to make sure that your standards, your competencies are up to are able to manage and operate under those new conditions, under those new terms. Okay. So we're looking good here. We're moving along, and but the next topics we're going to talk about is really a risk identification, risk assessment, and I'm sure most people are familiar with risk assessment, risk identification. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but again, this is important because since we've identified the assets, we've brought in everybody. Let's go back a bit. We've done the holistic approach. We've aligned this with the business objectives, and we've assessed the assets. We now need to see what risks exist and these assets are exposed to. But security, loss prevention, and whatever you're, like I said, whatever realm of security that you're in, you cannot sit by yourself in your office and do that assessment by yourself because you haven't brought in the various stakeholders, you haven't done a holistic approach to, you haven't gotten a clear, or you don't have a clear understanding of what the business is, what the business objectives are, and three, you did not appreciate what the assets are. Because what you may see as, like I mentioned, a power cord that only costs $50, to that user, that is a critical piece of equipment that ensures that the $50 million piece of equipment can function. So but as a security manager, you should not take on this entire process by itself. And that's why the term enterprise, because that's encouraging you as a security manager to go out and embrace and understand the enterprise, understand the entire dynamic of the enterprise so that you can implement the right strategy. So risk identification, risk assessments are important. This involves identifying and documenting potential risks that could affect the achievement of the operational objectives. You, as the security manager, cannot or should not do this by yourself. This includes both internal and external threats. This is what we talked about earlier. And the assessment involves analyzing and evaluating the identified risk. So again, similar to what you would have done in the asset identification and valuation. In the risk identification and assessment, you assess the impact of these various risks. What would they have on the various assets? Okay. And this should be done with the area expert, not in isolation, not siloed, but with the area expert. If this is finance, then you need to be speaking with the financial experts. If this is hospitality, then you need to be speaking with the persons who are actually functioning and operating in hospitality. Or if it's healthcare, similarly, you want to be speaking with those persons and getting a clear picture of what the impact would be if we lose the power cord, if we lose the $50 million piece of equipment, if we lose the particular staff member, if we lose a particular location, because at this location exists our servers, for example. So if we lose that particular location, notwithstanding we don't actually operate from that location, but this building on the campus or this particular building at a remote address is it houses your servers. So you're not actually manufacturing at that location. You're not delivering the service at that location. You don't even have any supplies at that location. But because of your business type, if you lose your server, you potentially cannot operate. So all of these things need to be assessed. And of course, we can break out risk assessments into two different ways. There's qualitative and there's quantitative assessments where we can rank or we can also provide descriptions on it. That's, like I said, those things are sort of the linchpin now as we move forward into the strategies for mitigation. So mitigation speaks to what? These strategies aim to reduce the vulnerabilities, prevent the incidents, enhance resilience in the face of threats. Risk mitigation strategies are an essential component of risk management, are designed to protect critical assets, ensure business continuity, and support organizational objectives. So here we were initially looking at more strategic applications. Now with risk mitigation strategies, here are the applications. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts and put the right process, the right lock, for lack of a better word, the right coding system. This is where we put these things in place. This is where we put training in place. Or this is where we create service level agreements, partnerships with external, with third party providers to ensure that we can deliver the various service. This is where we count to see how much it's going to cost as well, because we may not be able to manage it. It may be cost out of our resources, our financial resources. So a lot of things are happening in mitigation. Let's talk about it. All right. So preventative controls, this is one of the strategies, and these strategies aim to prevent security incidents. This is the lock. This is the gate. This is the password. This is the access card. So these are things that I'm hoping to prevent. I'll take it a little further because in some instances, uh, again, an often overlooked area is, who are you hiring? Who are the individuals that you're bringing into your entity, and you're exposing them to your internal trade secrets. They're in, and you didn't do a proper vetting process, and they're only there for 3 months. But that 3 months, those 90 days, they took advantage of your Slack controls and stole maybe not physical assets, but those intangible assets, those various proprietary information, proprietary processes. So that's important. So implementing access controls to restrict unauthorized access to sensitive information or critical systems. Again, that's kind of difficult if you're bringing somebody in for 90 days, or I'm not say for 90 days, but bringing them in and they decide that they have nefarious intent and intentions. But this is just the reality of how extensive or how comprehensive your enterprise security risk systems need to be. Because you can have the best physical security measures, you can have the best uh, cyber security measures in place, but you allow the gentleman with the water bottle, the water delivery guy, to walk straight into your sensitive area with that water bottle because they want to change the water, and all of your information is out unexposed during that process. So these little nuances can be very tragic when you do your investigation. So conducting regular security awareness training for employees, and that goes back to making sure that your staff understand what the exposures are, what is sensitive, what is not sensitive, where persons can go, where persons cannot go. This is a part of the whole process. And again, restrictive when we get into the cyber realm, we're deploying firewalls or antivirus software, intrusion detection systems to block malicious activity. So these are your preventative mechanisms or preventative measures. Uh, let's talk about another aspect, the detective controls. And these are things that now provide you the notification, tells you something is wrong, and how we're going to address the issue. So these are designed to identify the incidents and breaches as soon as practical as they occur, allowing you to respond quickly and minimize the impact. So you're preventing, but it's not always going to be 100%. So if a breach does occur, you want to be able to see it, address it as quickly as possible. So that comes along with implementing surveillance and monitoring systems that are real time, with reduced delay mechanism, conducting regular audits and assessments to identify these vulnerabilities and gaps. So these things have to go hand in hand, because we may have a real-time detection notification system or monitoring and surveillance system, but those systems also need to be reviewed and checked, because we sometimes get into a sense of you get comfortable, and things that should be done to the detail or in detail as they should be are not done, because of course Well, nothing happens. Nothing happens. Has happened, and so people get complacent, and that now is a risk, because you should be doing 5 steps, but because nothing happens, you jump from step 1 to step 5, because the other ones have become, in your opinion, as the operator, have become obsolete. And so you, as the manager, want to make sure that you conduct very regular audits and assessments to see that what gaps exist from human error. And in many instances, it's human error. It's complacency. It's greed. These things that drive persons to do things that they should not do. It's laziness. It's just they're just they're bored. They've been doing this for the last 2 years and nothing's happened. So why am I going to do steps 1, 2, and 3 when I can just jump to step 5 and step 6? So these things we wanna be careful of and identify. Uh, Establishing incident response procedures. So when something happens, what do we do? This goes back to prioritizing. What are the first things that we need to do to contain this particular breach? Are the persons who are operating, are they aware of it? Have they been tested and trained and exercised regularly enough that they can perform that task when it happens? Because if we look at the scenario that I described earlier, in many instances, persons may have become complacent because nothing has happened. So they know what the response procedure is, but they have not done it in such a long time. All right, so corrective controls. These strategies are from developing and implementing incident response plans that outline steps to be taken in the event of a security breach, maintaining up-to-date backups of critical data. Again, very important. Uh, copy, copy, and have another site. Have copies available. To facilitate timely restoration. And excuse me, conducting post-incident review. So after we would have hopefully recovered from this incident, let's go back and let's talk about it. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? Did we meet our procedures? Was it done in the appropriate time frame? Did we dot our I's? Did we cross our T's? How can we improve on what has occurred? I mentioned earlier that some things are just going to go wrong, and they're not going to be able to do it. So let's talk about risk transfer, and how do we transfer this risk? So insurance for critical equipment, critical processes, um, you're just going to have to insure it, because this just how we the world that we live in. We're not going to be able to implement a strategy or execute that strategy at 100% efficiency all the time. That's our aim, that's our goal. But reality says that in some instances, it's not going to happen. So we need to now, transfer that risk to another group. And one method of doing that is via insurance. Another way of transferring that risk is to outsource it. Put that risk, put the majority of that risk, because it's still something that you're going to have to own. But now the majority or the greater percentage of the delivering that particular service is put on another more capable, I would suspect, because of the fact that you outsourced it, more capable entity that has the expertise and can deliver that service, has the resources, and are able to deliver that service. So those are two ways of transferring the risk. Get insurance. You just have to insure it, because you can be the best driver in the world, but that other driver, is the person who's going to cause the damage. And if you don't have all of the resources, outsource it. Third party entities who you now, and we put a pin in that for a second as well. When you decide to outsource that particular functionality, you want to make sure that that third party provider you've done your due diligence as well, that you've done a risk assessment, you have done your research, your review to ensure that they can do what they say they can do. Because now if you haven't done that, you haven't really transferred the risk. You've just added cost, because you're paying them for the service, but when they need to perform, they can't perform. So your costs go up. Lastly, in this particular aspect of risk mitigation strategy is, this is the fifth one, we talk about risk avoidance. In some cases, you may choose to avoid it. Just, we're not going to do it. We're not going to go down that road. We're not going to acquire that product or deliver that service anymore because of the cost, because of the exposure. It doesn't make good business sense. And we decided to discontinue or not to go down that road anymore. All of this again is in the event, if you understand security, because again, when I get into discussions like this with clients, the question is, how is the security? But if you understand security, security is about loss prevention. Security is about loss prevention and retaining assets that you have. And so if you're in an environment or a condition that does not meet those basic definitions, then it's not good. And it is a security issue if you're losing or you cannot retain the assets that you would have required. We're looking good. We have a few more minutes. I'm going to move to technology, the integration of technology. We've heard the term on numerous occasions. There's an app for that. If you're not reasonably embracing technology to deliver all of this service, all of these services, this whole process, as a matter of fact, there's software now that you just plug in your data and they will develop for you an enterprise security risk management program. So embracing and taking technology on is so important if you want to stay competitive, if you want to look at long term, if you want to be resilient. So you want to appreciate where technology falls in this process. So it involves tools to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of your risk management process, leveraging various types of technology, from identifying, assessing, monitoring, mitigating risk more effectively, particularly in areas such as cybersecurity, physical security, and operational risk management. So like I said, there's an app for that. If you're not taking advantage of these tools, so you get a faster and more detailed understanding, then you're not at the tier that you want to operate. You're not going to be operating as efficiently, and you're not going to be as competitive. So we look at these different aspects. We look at the cyber security technology, and if we talk about everything from security information and event management systems, if we talk about intrusion detection, event prevention systems, or IDPS, as they would say, or endpoint detection response, because of the fast pace of cyber, the fast pace of technology, you need something in place that is going to be able to read and be sensitive to these various breach attempts much quicker than the human element. Okay, and something that updates itself to ensure that you stay current as to the changing risk and threat landscape. So obviously physical security technologies, and that ranges from cameras to alarm systems to intrusion detection systems, operational risk technology. And again, like I mentioned to you, that there are software out there that can help you to create and develop a comprehensive, develop, and maintain an effective risk management program. Important to that is the fact that you have persons who understand, because it's one thing to plug in the data and you get this information given to you, but you need to understand it and comprehend what the information is and what needs to happen. There's obviously data analysis. We now in the age of AI, which is again changing the landscape tremendously as it relates to loss prevention. We have one of the big concerns out there, obviously, is the deep fakes, where a person's voice we're able to mimic, clone voices, and actually produce. I'm going to be an AI now that's speaking and delivering this content to you. So all of this is a concern, and how you integrate it into your system, but also how do you recognize what's happening with it. And obviously cloud-based solutions to assist in that. You have things like cloud access security brokers. You have security as a service, offering protection to cloud-based applications and data and infrastructure from cyber threats. So all of these systems are out there to help make your operation more efficient because of the fast pace of business in 2024 and beyond. The human component is still critical, is still vital, but the pace is what's really it really impacts the ability to maintain or to keep up with the changes. So continuous improvement is exactly that. This is an ongoing change. Technology that existed yesterday, by end of day today, is going to become obsolete. So how do you ensure that you stay current? And that's, folks, it's a living, breathing process, just like we are living, breathing entities. We have to see our enterprise security risk management as a living, breathing entity that does not stop, that is ongoing. I worked with several clients in the financial sector, and they, up until I would say even this year, some of them, because they work 9 to 5, they are of the opinion that their operation is 9 to 5. But if you are delivering financial services, your operation is 24/7. It is 24/7 because people have access to their funds. Persons are always attempting to breach your infrastructure. So notwithstanding your doors or your business hours per se, maybe a 9 to 5, weekends off, holidays off, right? Your security measures, your security systems are 24/7, and your operation, in my opinion, is 24/7 because of the fact of the constant potential for attacks, breaches, the constant of need to deliver service to a client who may be on the other side of the world, where it's 5 o'clock in the morning, where they're beginning their day, but you're at 5 p.m. and you're ending your day. You can't tell that client to wait until business time in another 12 hours or so. So these are the little things that you have to be concerned about, and that's why continuous improvement, adaptation, adjustment is so important. So it's systematically reviewing and enhancing risk management processes, procedures, controls to ensure they remain effective and aligned with the organizational objectives. Systematically, going back to what we talked about earlier, you want to make sure that they align with the business, the asset, the valuation of them, and the risk prioritization, all of those things, so we know what we want to do, and it's important to the business. And the impact of it, because we don't want to be addressing and putting resources into in a particular asset that has little value or little impact if it's lost to the business operation. Not saying that we don't fix it, but how do we align and how do we make sure it's in the right format? So regular review, like we talked about, feedback. Speak with your staff, speak with the various stakeholders. What's going on in the business, and don't just wait for something to happen. You should be doing this as regularly as possible. As simple as a little employee feedback or the customer feedback boxes. Don't just put them there. Look at them, read some of the notes, because an employee or a customer may identify something that may be overlooked by management and supervisors or even staff. So don't just put those little comment boxes out there in your lobby for the sake of aesthetics. Open the boxes up and take a look and see what they're saying. Okay. Benchmarking and best practices. What are the other guys doing? What are we doing? What did we succeed at? How do we replicate that? How do we make sure that we can improve, replicate, and sustain that level of performance? Okay. And it isn't just, like I said, it isn't just the other guys. It may be something that you're doing that's really good. And so you need to find, how do we sustain it? How do we improve it and make it more efficient, more effective? So emerging risk. All over the world, there are things happening. There's change in technology. There's change in competencies or particular skill sets that are required or need to change. So how do we adapt? How do we change? How do we ensure that we stay on the cutting edge? Employee training and development. So said, so done. You have to invest in your staff. You have to make sure that they stay on the cutting edge. They stay on the cutting edge in their ability to perform. They stay motivated to deliver the service that you're asking them to deliver. And last but not least, in this particular vein, collaboration. So effective collaboration is critical in continuous improvement. You want to communicate, you want to speak, you want to go to the different, attend various association meetings, professional forums, find out what's going on in the environment so you stay sensitive. Speak with the persons within your business to ensure that what's happening in that in the department, what changes have occurred in that department, and how do we now ensure that those changes don't have a negative impact on the business. Okay, see, we're moving out of time. So in summary, the enterprise security risk management involves a holistic approach in identifying and assessing mitigating security risk within an organization. Risk mitigation strategies include preventive controls, detective controls, corrective controls, risk transfer, and risk avoidance. Technology integration. You gotta take it by the horn, embrace it, and ensure that it's working to your best. All right. And obviously, last but not least, continuous improvement and ensure that you align business, your strategies are aligned with the business objectives. So, folks, thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to open up for the last few moments for if there are any questions, any comments, please feel free to join
Hi,
in discussion.
hi, Mr. Nuri, how you doing?
Hey, good. Mr.
All right.
Curry.
Yes, question for you. Sorry for my tardiness. Is the session recorded? And if so, um, will we be able to access this recording session so I can distribute it to my executive team and compliance department?
Yes, I'll be providing, you can get access to the recording, or also there'll be access to the slideshow.
Okay, great.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. We put the time rate at 10 o'clock. It's about 10:58. Uh, Again, questions, comments, insight.
Like the tidbit that you indicated that not only for financial institutions that they have to secure just from the parameters of 9 to 5, but the 24 hours. And a lot of times I see that financial institutions and other institutions fail to realize that. And then when it comes to dealing with the bureaucracy in certain corporate, trying to obtain certain infrastructures, there are roadblocks. What what do you suggest in terms of providing a more sound approach to your existing executive team for approval for implementing such security methods to mitigate the risk?
Yeah, what I find is that again we have to speak the language of the business, and for most businesses, 99% of the business, the language is money. How does my product or how does my service security, which like I mentioned earlier, does not is very intangible because if nothing's happening, we don't see the tangible value of it. So one way I can recommend is again to show the financial benefit of it, perhaps give reports as to how many attacks did occur and how much and your system's ability to reduce or prevent that attack from actually penetrating. So they see it actually happening. That first of all, hey, we are being targeted. We have been targeted, but our systems have been able to deter, delay, detect, that particular attack. So that's important, and to show the landscape, that the landscape is changing, because you want to be able to show where that what we use yesterday or a week ago, because of the changing environment, may not be as effective as it is now. But we need to be able to demonstrate the fact that we have been uh, um, targeted. We have been able to stop and prevent. So we need to, at minimum, continue or certainly improve upon what we're doing now. As simple as you know the security guard at many some businesses use the old, it's not practiced much now, but security officers would be in their counting and letting you know that at the end of the day 300 people pass through the door, they'll have a counter in their hand. And the value in that, a lot of people miss it, is to show that, hey, listen, I'm attentive, I'm paying attention, I'm telling you how much people came into your business. And that helps you to also look at, okay, if I had 300 persons in, and every one of those persons spent $1, all right, I should have at minimum made $300 today. And I'm just using that as a very loose example to show you how you need to be able to demonstrate what we are doing, even though you don't see it or it's not as visible. It isn't the attack, because you don't want the business to have to get attacked and, oh yeah, we were able to take the attack down. That's important, but that isn't really effective to your security mechanisms. Okay, I hope that helps.
Thank you. It did.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, folks, we're winding up. This is one of another in our series, preventative measures. Our intent is to continue to expose professionals like yourself and open up a forum for discussion about various security components. So we'll be continuing on this trend for another session. Look on our LinkedIn page or via email for another session coming up next month. And so I appreciate that you joined us. Thank you for your time. You will be getting copies of the slideshow and access to the recorded event. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Uh, Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Come.